Commander Jake Reeves stared out the observation window of the Coalition warship Endless Horizon, watching stars blur past in ways that still made his stomach turn. 3 months ago, he had been teaching tactics at the Academy on Mars. Now he was hurtling through deep space, with aliens he'd only seen in briefings and videos. The door behind him hissed open. Jake turned and felt his breath catch. The creature that entered stood nearly 7 feet tall, with 4 arms covered in what looked like natural armor plating. Her skin was a deep blue-gray color that seemed to shift in the light. 2 large golden eyes focused on him with an intensity that made him feel like prey. "You are the human they assigned to me," she said. Her voice came through a translator device on her chest, but Jake could hear the clicking and whistling sounds of her real language underneath. "I am Cathara of the Valkyrie 3rd Legion. I have killed more enemies than you have seen days, human." Jake straightened his spine and met her gaze. He had read about Valkyrie customs during the trip. Looking away was considered weakness. "Commander Jake Reeves, Earth Defense Forces. I look forward to working with you." Cathara's eyes narrowed. 2 of her 4 hands rested on weapons at her sides. "Your species has been in space for only 12 of your years. You know nothing of real war. Try not to die quickly. It reflects poorly on me." Before Jake could respond, alarms screamed throughout the ship. Red lights flashed along every corridor. A voice boomed over the speakers in multiple languages. "All personnel to battle stations. Devourer signatures detected. Multiple contacts. This is not a drill." Cathara moved with shocking speed, her 4 arms pulling weapons and checking equipment in a blur of motion. Jake grabbed his rifle and followed her toward the hangar bay. Around them, dozens of other species rushed to their positions. He saw the insectoid chitters, the gaseous windburn in their containment suits, and several other humans looking just as nervous as he felt. The hangar was chaos. Small fighters launched into the black. Gunships loaded with troops prepared for boarding actions. Jake and Cathara climbed into a drop pod with 8 other soldiers. The pod was designed for Valkyrie, so Jake had to squeeze into a seat meant for someone much larger. "First time in combat?" asked one of the other soldiers, a reptilian creature whose name Jake couldn't pronounce. "First time in real space combat," Jake admitted. "I've been in ground wars." Cathara made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Ground wars. How primitive. In space, when you fail, everyone dies. No place to hide. No reinforcements. Just the black and the enemy." The pod shook as it launched from the ship. Through the small window, Jake saw the battle unfold. The Coalition fleet numbered maybe 40 ships. The Devourers had twice that many, and their vessels looked wrong. They were organic things, grown rather than built, with surfaces that pulsed and writhed. Their pods streaked toward a damaged Coalition cruiser that had been boarded. The plan was simple. Clear the Devourers, get the crew to escape pods, and blow the ship before the enemy could use it. Jake had done similar missions on Earth, fighting insurgents in occupied buildings. How different could it be? Very different, he learned in the first 30 seconds. The pod crashed through the cruiser's hull into a cargo bay. The doors blew open and Cathara leaped out, all 4 arms firing weapons. The Devourers were nightmares made flesh. They looked like a horrible mix of insect and plant, with too many limbs and mouths that opened in wrong directions. They moved like liquid, flowing across walls and ceiling. Jake's training took over. He fired in controlled bursts, aiming for the cluster of eyes on each creature's main body. The other soldiers spread out, creating a defensive perimeter. Within minutes, 3 of their team were dead, dissolved by acid that sprayed from Devour mouths. "Fall back to the corridor," Cathara ordered. "We cannot hold this position." They retreated in good order, but the Devourers kept coming. Jake noticed something that the others seemed to miss. The creatures were herding them, forcing them away from the escape pod bays and toward the ship's reactor core. "They want us to go deeper into the ship," Jake shouted over the gunfire. "It's a trap." Cathara glanced back at him. "All battles are traps, human. We have our orders." "And our orders are suicide," Jake said. He pulled up a map of the ship on his wrist display. "Look, they've cut off every route to the escape pods. If we go forward, we hit the reactor. If we go back, we hit their main force. We're supposed to die here." The Volcari warrior studied the map, her eyes flicking back and forth. "What do you suggest?" Jake pointed to a service tunnel that ran along the outer hull. "We go sideways. These tunnels are too small for devourers their size. We move through the walls, hit them from unexpected angles, and make our way to the pods by going around their trap." "Humans and your obsession with crawling through tunnels," Cathara muttered. But she signaled the others. "We follow the humans' plan. Move." The service tunnels were barely wide enough for Jake. Cathara had to fold her limbs in ways that looked painful. The other soldiers struggled even more. But Jake had been right. The devourers couldn't follow easily. They could hear the creatures screaming and tearing at the walls. But the metal-held Jake led them through a maze of ducts and crawl spaces. Using his experience from urban warfare back on Earth, he knew how buildings worked, how their hidden spaces connected. Spaceships were just buildings that flew. After 20 minutes of crawling, they emerged in a section near the escape pods. But the devourers had learned. A dozen of the creatures waited for them, along with something worse. A devourer commander, a massive thing that filled half the corridor, with tentacles that ended in blade-sharp points. "Scatter and fire," Cathara ordered. The battle was brutal and close. Jake dove behind a support beam as acid splashed where he had been standing. He fired at the commander's eyes, but its hide was thick. One of the tentacles swept toward him. He couldn't dodge in time. Cathara's lower arms caught the tentacle. Her upper arms fired point-blank into the commander's face. The effort cost her. Another tentacle pierced through her shoulder, black blood spraying. She roared in pain but didn't let go. Jake saw his chance. He ran forward, sliding under the massive body, and fired his rifle's grenade launcher directly into the creature's underside. The explosion threw him backward. When the smoke cleared, the commander was dead. Cathara slumped against the wall, breathing hard. Jake helped her up, supporting her weight. "Can you move?" "I have survived worse," she said, but her voice was weaker. "Get the others to the pods." They loaded the surviving crew into escape pods and launched them toward the Coalition fleet. Jake set the cruiser's reactor to overload and climbed into the last pod with Cathara and 2 other soldiers. As they shot away from the dying ship, Jake watched it explode, taking a dozen devourer ships with it in a brilliant flash. Cathara looked at him with what might have been respect. "You saved my life, human. Your tunnel plan worked. I have underestimated your species." Jake smiled tiredly. "Just call me Jake, and you're welcome." "Jake," she repeated, testing the name. "Perhaps you will not die as quickly as I thought. Perhaps we will make a good team after all." As their pod docked with the endless horizon, Jake realized that Cathara was right. This was just the beginning. The real war was still ahead of them, and he had a feeling his life had just changed in ways he couldn't predict. He glanced at his alien partner, already barking orders at the medics, and thought that maybe, just maybe, he had found someone he could trust in this strange new universe. 3 years had passed since that first chaotic battle. Jake barely recognized himself in the mirror anymore. His face carried scars that no medic could fully heal, and his eyes had developed that 1,000-yard stare common to all soldiers who had seen too much. But he was alive, and in this war, that counted for something. Cathara had changed too, though Jake had trouble seeing it at first. Her armor plate spore marks from 100 battles, each one a story she could tell. She moved with even more confidence now, and when she spoke, others listened. Together, they had become something the Coalition called a bonded pair, partners who fought so well together that they seemed to share one mind. The ice world of Rimger was supposed to be a simple defensive position. The Devourers had bypassed it twice before, considering it worthless. But Coalition intelligence had discovered that the planet sat on a key supply route. If they could hold it, they could cut off 3 entire Devourer fleets from their resource worlds. Jake stood on the frozen plain, his breath forming clouds in the thin atmosphere. Around him, 500 Coalition soldiers dug defensive positions into the ice. Cathara approached, her 4 arms carrying equipment that would have required 3 humans to lift. The thermal scanners show unstable vents beneath the surface, she said. The ground could collapse if there is too much weight or vibration. Jake studied the data on his tablet. An idea began forming. What if we use that? Use what? The unstable ground? Cathara tilted her head in the way she did when she thought he was being crazy. You want us to fall through the ice? No, I want them to fall through the ice. Jake pulled up a map and began marking positions. We set up our defenses here, and here. Light positions, nothing heavy. Then we set charges along these vents. When the Devourers come, we let them push us back, make them think they're winning. They'll bring up their heavy units, concentrate their forces right over the weakest points. Then we blow the charges. Cathara stared at the map for a long moment. It is insane. If the calculations are wrong, we all die. If the charges fail, we all die. If they do not take the bait, we all die. So it's a normal Tuesday, Jake said with a tired smile. Cathara made that clicking sound that Jake had learned was Valkyrie laughter. You humans have a strange way of facing death. Very well. I will inform the commander of your plan. If it fails, I will personally throw you into the ice myself. The Devourers arrived 2 days later, their ships darkening the pale sky. Thousands of them descended in waves, far more than intelligence had predicted. Jake watched from his position as the enemy formed up, their organic ships pulsing with horrible life. All units, this is Commander Reeves. Jake spoke into his comm. Remember the plan. Fight hard, but fall back when I give the word. Make them think they're winning. And whatever happens, trust your battle partner. Beside him, Cathara checked her weapons one last time. I trust you, Jake. Do not make me regret it. The battle began with artillery fire that turned ice to steam. The Devourers came like a tide of nightmares, screeching and flowing across the frozen ground. Jake's forces fired and retreated, following the plan perfectly. The enemy took the bait, pushing harder, bringing up their massive walker units and heavy assault forms. Now, Jake whispered, watching his display as the Devourers concentrated exactly where he wanted them. Now! All units, pull back double time, Jake ordered. Blow the charges in 3, 2, 1. Now, the ice world of Rimger screamed. Explosions tore through the thermal vents, and the unstable ground gave way. Thousands of tons of ice collapsed into the superheated chambers below. Steam and fire erupted in massive geysers. Devourer units fell into the gaps, their screams cut short by the boiling water beneath. But Jake had miscalculated. The collapse spread further than predicted. The ground beneath his own position began to crack and shift. Everyone move. Get to solid ground. Soldiers ran in every direction. Jake helped a wounded chitter towards safety when Cathar's voice cut through the chaos. Jake, behind you. He turned to see a devourer emerging from the steam, one of the survivors, its body burned and broken, but still deadly. It lunged at Jake with its remaining limbs. Jake tried to raise his rifle, but slipped on the ice. This was it. 3 years of survival, ending because of bad footing. Cathara hit the Devourer like a missile, all 4 arms locked around it. They crashed to the ground, rolling dangerously close to a collapsing edge. The Valkyrie warrior fought with desperate strength, her mandibles clicking with effort. Jake scrambled to his feet and put 3 shots into the creature's head. It finally went still. Cathara. Jake grabbed her arms and pulled her away from the crumbling edge. They stumbled back to solid ground together, both breathing hard. Around them, the battle was ending. The Devourers were retreating, their forces broken by the trap. They had won. That night, the survivors gathered in the makeshift base camp. They had held Rimgur with less than 100 casualties, destroying nearly 10,000 Devourer units. It was a victory that would be studied in military academies for generations. Jake found Cathara alone on a ridge, watching the stars. Her shoulder was bandaged where a piece of ice had cut through her armor during the collapse. "You stood in that position for 14 hours, Jake said, sitting beside her. "The other soldiers told me. You never fell back until the very end." "Someone had to hold the center," Cathara said simply. "If I had retreated too soon, the Devourers would have seen through your plan. You could have died. So could you." Cathara turned to look at him with her golden eyes. "When I pulled you from the ice on our first mission, I thought it was luck. When you saved me in the tunnels, I thought it was chance. But now, after 3 years and 100 battles, I know the truth. We keep each other alive because we are supposed to. Because we are." She paused, searching for the word in human language. "Because we are meant to fight together." Jake felt something warm in his chest, despite the cold air. "The other species are talking about us, you know. They call us the Death Pair. Some of them think we're crazy for volunteering for the worst missions. Are we crazy?" Cathara asked. "Probably," Jake admitted. "But I wouldn't want to do this with anyone else. I trust you more than anyone I've ever known, Cathara. You've had my back in every fight. You've saved my life more times than I can count. I don't know what I did to earn that kind of loyalty, but I'm grateful for it." Tandara was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached into a pouch on her belt and pulled out something small. It was a piece of fruit, one of the rare sweet fruits from her home world. She had been saving her rations. "For you," she said, offering it to Jake. "You fought well today. You should be honored." Jake took the fruit, confused but touched by the gesture. "Thank you. That's really kind of you." As he ate the fruit, he noticed Cathara watching him intently, her posture somehow different. Her armor plates seemed to shine more than usual, even in the dim light. She stood slightly closer to him than necessary. But Jake was too tired and too focused on the war to think much about it. They were partners, friends forged in battle. That was enough. What he didn't know was that Cathara had just performed the first part of a Valkyrie courtship ritual. What he didn't know was that she had spent the last year observing human customs, trying to understand the strange species that had become more important to her than her own life. What he didn't know was that when a Valkyrie warrior chose a battle partner, it often meant something deeper than just combat. But he would learn. Eventually, he would understand. For now, they sat together under alien stars. 2 soldiers sharing a moment of peace in an endless war, not knowing that their bond would be tested in ways neither could imagine, and that it would grow into something neither had thought possible. The Forge worlds hung in space like burning jewels, their surfaces covered with factories that never stopped working. These industrial planets produced most of the Coalition's weapons, armor, and ships. If the Devourers took them, the war was over. Everyone knew it. That's why the defense had to succeed. That's why Jake and Cathara had volunteered for the suicide mission. Intelligence had finally located the Devourer Central Hive Nexus, the controlling mind that coordinated their entire war effort. It was hidden in a massive organic structure on the dark side of Forge World 7, protected by thousands of enemy units. A direct assault would cost millions of lives, but a small team might be able to sneak in through the factory tunnels, plant explosives, and escape before anyone knew they were there. The transport shuttle dropped them 10 kilometers from the target. Jake, Tathara, and 12 other elite soldiers from various species. They had 72 hours to reach the Nexus, plant the charges, and extract. After that, the Coalition fleet would begin their main assault with, or without them. They moved through the underground factory complexes, past assembly lines that still churned out weapons even as the battle raged above. The Devourers had infested many sections, their organic growths covering the metal walls like a disease. The smell was overwhelming, a mix of decay and chemicals that made Jake's eyes water. Kathara led the way, her enhanced senses detecting enemy patrols before the others could see them. They avoided 3 major Devourer groups and eliminated 2 smaller ones in silent, brutal ambushes. By the 20th hour, they had lost 4 team members to traps and hidden enemies. By the 40th hour, only Jake, Kathara, and 2 others remained. "We should turn back," one of the other soldiers said, a Windburn named Zephyr, who communicated through his translator. "We have lost too many. The mission is compromised." "We're halfway there," Jake said, checking his map. "Turning back now means they all died for nothing. Going forward means we all die for nothing," Zephyr argued. "Be realistic, Commander." Kathara made a low growling sound. "The human is right. We finish the mission or we die trying. Those are the only options for warriors." They pressed on through tunnels that grew narrower and more dangerous. The Devourer presence increased. They could hear the creatures moving through the walls, their clicking and hissing echoing in the darkness. At the 50-hour mark, they lost another soldier to a ceiling collapse that turned out to be a Devourer ambush. Jake, Kathara, and Zephyr reached the final approach to the Nexus. The tunnel ahead had partially collapsed, leaving only a small gap to crawl through. On the other side, they could see the pulsing green glow of the Hive Nexus, a massive organic brain suspended in biomechanical supports. "I will go first," Kathara said. "I am strongest. If there is danger, I can fight." She squeezed into the gap, her armor scraping against stone and metal. Jake followed, with Zephyr bringing up the rear. They were halfway through when the tunnel shook. More collapses, triggered by explosions from the battle above. Rock and debris rained down. "Move, move!" Jake shouted. Zephyr made it through. Kathara pulled herself free, but Jake's leg was pinned under a fallen beam. He tried to pull it free, but the weight was too much. More debris was falling. The entire tunnel was coming down. Kathara turned back without hesitation. Her forearms grabbed the beam and lifted with strength that seemed impossible. "Go, now!" Jake scrambled free just as the tunnel collapsed completely, sealing them off from any retreat. They were trapped on the Nexus side with no way back. Their only option was forward, completing the mission and hoping the Coalition could extract them afterward. They planted the explosives around the Nexus chamber, working quickly but carefully. The charges needed to be positioned exactly right to destroy the organic superbrain, without killing themselves in the explosion. Jake set the timer for 30 minutes. It would give them just enough time to reach a safe distance and find some kind of shelter. "How do we get out?" Zephyr asked, looking around the chamber. "The way we came is blocked. There must be another exit, but there wasn't. Every door was sealed or led deeper into Devourer territory. They were trapped in a chamber with a bomb counting down to their deaths." Jake sat down heavily against the wall, his mind racing through options. None of them were good. Kathara sat beside him, her breathing calm despite their situation. Zephyr moved around the chamber, searching desperately for an escape. "I am sorry," Cathara said quietly. "I have brought you to your death, Jake." "We brought each other," Jake said. "That's what partners do. And hey, we completed the mission. When this thing blows, it'll cripple the entire Devour command structure. The Coalition might actually win because of us. Small comfort when we are dead. Yeah." Jake laughed, a tired, slightly broken sound. "Yeah, it is." They sat in silence for a moment. The timer on the explosives ticked down. 25 minutes. 24. "There is something I must tell you," Cathara said. "Before we die, you should know. Among my people, when we choose a battle partner, it is not just for combat. It is a sacred bond. We share our lives, our futures, our very souls with this person." Jake looked at her, seeing something in her posture he had never noticed before. "Cathara, what are you saying?" "I am saying that for 3 years, I have been performing courtship rituals. I have brought you gifts of food. I have groomed my armor in your presence. I have positioned my body to protect you in ways that indicate romantic intention to any Velkari. But you never understood. How could you? You are human. You do not know our ways." Jake's mind flashed back through dozens of moments he had dismissed or misunderstood. The fruits. The way she always stood on his left side in combat. The way she had spent hours polishing her armor before their last few missions. "Oh my God, you've been asking me out. For 3 years. And I had no idea. I thought perhaps you were not interested. That my feelings were foolish. A Valkyrie warrior and a human male. It is not something that happens. Our species are too different. Are we though?" Jake asked. "Different, I mean. You're brave, loyal, strong, and you care about doing what's right. You've saved my life more times than I can count. You're my best friend in the entire universe. And if I'm being honest with myself, which seems like a good idea when we have about 20 minutes left to live, I've had feelings for you for at least a year. Maybe longer. I just thought it was impossible. That you could never see a human that way." Cathara turned to face him fully, her golden eyes reflecting the dim light. "You have feelings for me? Romantic feelings?" "Yeah," Jake admitted. "I do. I have for a while now. I just thought I was being stupid, falling for someone so far out of my league. Someone from a different species who probably thought of me as just a weird little alien." "I have never thought of you as little," Cathara said, and Jake couldn't tell if she was joking. "And you are not stupid. You are brilliant, creative, brave in ways my people do not understand. You make me want to be better. You make me feel things I have never felt before. So what do we do about it?" Jake asked. "We've got about 15 minutes before we're both dead. We could spend those minutes telling each other everything we have been too afraid to say," Cathara suggested. "Or we could try to find a way to live, so we have more than 15 minutes. Jake stood up, energy returning to his body. "You're right. We're not dead yet. Let's figure this out." They searched the chamber again, this time working together with new determination. Zephyr joined them, motivated by their sudden hope. Jake noticed that one section of wall seemed thinner than the others, and the sound when he tapped, it was different. "This leads somewhere," he said. "It's not as thick as it looks." Cathara examined it with her enhanced senses. An old ventilation shaft. Sealed over, but still there. If we can break through, then we can reach the factory levels and get out before the explosion. Jake finished. They worked frantically, using their weapons to cut through the wall. With 5 minutes left on the timer, they broke through into a narrow shaft. It was barely wide enough for Cathara, but she squeezed through. Jake and Zephyr followed. They ran through the shaft as fast as they could, climbing and crawling and pulling each other along. Behind them, the timer hit 0. The explosion was massive, shaking the entire facility. Fire and shockwaves raced through the tunnels. They barely made it to a blast door before the flames reached them. When the shaking stopped, they emerged into a coalition-held section of the factory. Soldiers rushed to help them. Medics checked them over. Someone handed Jake a commune, telling him the fleet was asking for him. But Jake wasn't paying attention to any of that. He was looking at Cathara, who was looking back at him. They had survived. They were alive. And they had things to say to each other, things that couldn't wait anymore. After we debrief, Jake said, we need to talk. Really talk. About everything. Cathara's mandibles formed what Jake had learned was a smile. Yes, we do. And I look forward to it, Jake. I look forward to many conversations with you. The Devour command structure collapsed over the next week. Without the central nexus coordinating their efforts, the enemy forces became confused and disorganized. The coalition began winning battles across every front. The end of the war suddenly seemed possible instead of just a hopeful dream. And through it all, Jake and Cathara stayed close. Knowing that something between them had changed in the Devour home cluster looked like something from a nightmare. Where there should have been planets, there were organic masses the size of moons. Where there should have been empty space, there were living tendrils connecting the structures in a massive web. This was the heart of the enemy, the place where the Queen Mind ruled over billions of Devour creatures. Jake stood on the bridge of the Coalition flagship Absolute Victory, watching the final fleet assemble. Every species had sent their best ships. Earth had contributed its newest carriers. The Valkyrie brought their fearsome battle cruisers. Even the peaceful Windburn had armed their vessels for this final fight. 3,000 ships in total, carrying the hopes of 100 worlds. Captain Reeves. An admiral approached him, a scarred Valkyrie veteran. Your strike force is ready. 100 of the Coalition's finest warriors. Your mission is to board the Queen Mind's vessel and eliminate her while we keep her fleet busy. Understood, sir, Jake said. He wore the uniform of a Coalition captain, now promoted after the Forge World's victory. Cathara stood beside him as his official second-in-command. Over the past months, they had grown even closer, though they had been careful to keep things professional in public. The war still needed them focused. Cathara touched his arm gently with one of her hands. Are you ready for this? No, Jake admitted. But I don't think anyone could really be ready for this. We're about to assault the most defended position in the galaxy. Then it is good we are doing it together, Cathara said. I cannot imagine facing this with anyone else by my side. The battle began with a massive artillery barrage. Coalition ships fired everything they had at the Devour fleet. The enemy responded with living weapons. Bioships that split apart and reformed, acid clouds that ate through armor, and swarms of small creatures that latched onto hulls and burrowed inside. Jake led his strike force through the chaos in armored boarding pods. They targeted the largest organic structure, a thing that looked like a twisted cathedral made of flesh and bone. Intelligence said the Queen Mind was inside, coordinating the entire Devour species through some kind of telepathic connection. The pods crashed through the outer membranes. Jake's team stormed out, firing at the Devour defenders. The interior was worse than anything Jake had seen before. The walls breathed. The floor pulsed with what might have been a heartbeat. Everything was covered in a slick organic material that smelled of rot and chemicals. Move forward, Jake ordered. Stay together. Watch for ambushes. They fought through corridor after corridor, each one harder than the last. The Devourers threw everything at them. Warrior forms, acid spitters, living bombs that exploded when touched. Jake's force of 100 warriors dwindled rapidly. 50 warriors. 30. 20. Cathara fought like a force of nature, her forearms moving independently, each one wielding a weapon or shield. She had positioned herself between Jake and the heaviest fighting, taking hits meant for him. Her armor was scorched and cracked. Blue blood leaked from several wounds. But she never slowed down. They reached a massive chamber, and Jake knew immediately they had found her. The Queen Mind was enormous, easily 50 feet tall, a bloated creature suspended in webs of neural tissue. Her mind pressed against Jake's consciousness, trying to break his will. Around them, hundreds of Devour guards moved to attack. "Defensive circle," Kathara shouted. The remaining warriors formed up, backs together, firing outward at the swarm. Jake pulled out the experimental weapon the Coalition scientists had given him. A neural disruptor designed specifically to kill the Queen Mind. But he needed to get close, within 20 feet, for it to work. And between him and the target were hundreds of enemies. "I need a path to the Queen," Jake said. "Just 10 seconds. That's all I need." Kathara looked at him, and Jake saw something in her eyes he had never seen before. Fear. Not for herself, but for him. "Jake, that is suicide. Even if you reach her, the guards will kill you before you can escape." "I know," Jake said. "But if I don't do this, we lose. Everyone dies. Every world falls. This is the moment everything has been leading to." "Then I go with you," Kathara said firmly. "We do this together, or not at all. Kathara, you need to lead the others out. Someone has to survive to report what happened here." She grabbed his arm with two of her hands, her grip strong enough to hurt. "Do you remember what you said to me in that collapsed chamber? About feelings? About wanting more time together? Did you mean it, or were those just words spoken in the face of death?" "I meant every word," Jake said. "I've meant them every day since." "Then hear my words now," Kathara said. "I love you, Jake Reeves. I have loved you for 3 years, through 100 battles. I have watched you be brave when others fled. I have watched you show mercy when others wanted revenge. I have watched you make impossible decisions and carry the weight of command with honor. You are everything I admire, everything I want in a partner. And if you think I will let you die alone, you are very wrong." Jake felt tears on his face, though he hadn't realized he was crying. "I love you too, Kathara. I should have said it sooner. I should have understood what you were trying to tell me. I'm sorry, I was so blind." "We were both blind," Kathara said. "But we see clearly now. So let us do this thing together, as we have done everything else." She turned to the other warriors. "Hold this position for as long as you can. When we reach the Queen, run. Get to the extraction point. That is an order." Then Kathara roared, a sound that made the wall shake, and charged directly at the Devour horde. Jake ran beside her, their movements perfectly synchronized after years of fighting together. Kathara became a whirlwind of destruction, her 4 arms cutting through enemies faster than they could react. She was magnificent and terrifying, a warrior in her element. Jake focused on the goal, dodging and weaving through the gaps Kathara created. Acid splashed near his feet. Claws raked his armor, but he kept moving forward. 10 feet from the Queen Mind. 8 feet. 6 feet. A Devour guard tackled Kathara from the side. More piled on top of her, driving her to the ground. She screamed, fighting to get free, but there were too many. "Jake, go! Finish it." Jake hesitated for just a moment. Every instinct told him to help her. But she was right. This was bigger than them. He activated the neural disruptor and threw it at the Queen Mind. The device latched onto her flesh and began firing pulses of energy directly into her brain. The Queen Mind shrieked, a sound that hurt to hear. Her mental pressure intensified, trying to crush Jake's mind. All around the chamber, Devour creatures stopped moving as the Queen's coordination faltered. But the shriek also attracted attention. Dozens of guards turned toward Jake. He pulled his sidearm and started firing. but there were too many. This was it. He had completed the mission, but he wouldn't live to see the victory. Then Cathara exploded from the pile of enemies that had buried her. She was covered in wounds, barely standing, but she positioned herself between Jake and the guards. Her forearms spread wide, making herself as large as possible. "You want him?" She roared at the Devourers. "You go through me first." She fought with everything she had left, buying Jake precious seconds. The neural disruptor completed its work. The Queen Mind collapsed, her death sending psychic shockwaves through the entire Devourer collective. All around them, enemies stopped moving as the central coordination died. Jake caught Cathara as she fell, her strength finally exhausted. Her armor was broken in a dozen places. Her blood pooled on the floor. But she was alive, breathing in ragged gasps. "We did it," Jake said, his voice breaking. "Cathara, we did it." "She's dead." "Good," Cathara whispered. "That is good. Jake, I cannot feel my legs. I think I am badly hurt." "You're going to be fine," Jake said, though he wasn't sure he believed it. "Stay with me? We're getting out of here." The other warriors reached them, carrying medical supplies. They loaded Cathara onto a stretcher and ran for the extraction point. The Devourer structure was collapsing around them as the Queen Mind's death caused a chain reaction. They barely made it to the boarding pods before the entire thing exploded. Back on the absolute victory, surgeons worked on Cathara for 8 hours. Jake waited outside the medical bay, pacing and praying to gods he wasn't sure he believed in. Other soldiers came to congratulate him on the victory. The Devourer fleet was in chaos, retreating on all fronts. The war was effectively over. Jake didn't care about any of that. He just wanted Cathara to live. When the doctors finally emerged, they looked exhausted but satisfied. "She will live," the chief surgeon said. It was close, but her Velkari physiology is remarkably resilient. She will need months of recovery, but she will survive. Jake nearly collapsed with relief. "Can I see her?" "She is sleeping now." "But yes, you may see her." Jake entered the quiet medical room. Cathara lay on a bed designed for her larger frame, wrapped in bandages and connected to various medical devices. But her chest rose and fell steadily. She was alive. He took one of her hands in his, careful of the 4 lines. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for being my partner. Thank you for being brave when I needed you. Thank you for loving me even when I was too stupid to see it. I promise, when you wake up, I'm going to spend every day making sure." 6 months after the war ended, Jake stood on the porch of his childhood home in Colorado, watching the sunset paint the Rocky Mountains in shades of orange and pink. The sky was clear and blue, unmarred by warships or battle smoke. It was beautiful and peaceful, and Jake felt completely out of place. "You're doing it again," his mother said, coming out with 2 cups of coffee. She handed him one and stood beside him. "That stare. Like you're somewhere else." "Sorry, Mom," Jake said, taking the coffee. "I'm trying to adjust. It's just weird being back." "You've been home for 3 months, honey. Have you thought about talking to someone? The VA has programs for veterans." "I've been to the counselors," Jake said. "They're helpful. It's just hard to explain. Everything feels too quiet, too safe. Like I'm waiting for something terrible to happen." His mother squeezed his shoulder. "Give it time. You've been through things most people can't imagine. You're allowed to take time to heal." Jake's phone buzzed. A message from the Coalition Command. His heart jumped, that old combat alertness kicking in. But it was just routine correspondence about his medal ceremony next month. He was being awarded the Star of Valor, one of the highest honors the Coalition could give. He would have to make a speech in front of representatives from 100 worlds, The thought made him more nervous than any battle had. That night, Jake lay in his old bedroom, staring at the ceiling. He had declined his parents' offer to redecorate. The room still had his high school posters and trophies, artifacts from a life that felt like it belonged to a different person. That Jake had never left Earth. That Jake had never seen aliens or fought in a war. That Jake had never fallen in love with a Valkyrie warrior who had saved his life more times than he could count. He missed Cathar with an intensity that surprised him. They had stayed in contact through video calls while she recovered on a Valkyrie medical station. She was healing well, the doctors said. She could walk again, fight again. But she needed time for her armor plates to fully regenerate. Time for her strength to return fully. They had talked about what came next. The Coalition was forming a peacekeeping force. Soldiers who would patrol the former devoured territories and help rebuild devastated worlds. They had both been offered positions, but they hadn't made any concrete plans. The distance between Earth and the Valkyrie homeworlds was vast. Maintaining a relationship across that distance would be difficult. Jake was starting to wonder if what they had felt during the war was real, or just the intensity of combat making everything seem more important than it was. Maybe Chithara was thinking the same thing. Maybe that's why neither of them had said anything definitive about their future. 2 days later, Jake was helping his father fix the fence in the backyard when his mother came running out, her face flushed with excitement. Jake, you need to see this. Turn on the news." They rushed inside to see every channel showing the same thing. A Valkyrie diplomatic ship had entered Earth's orbit, the first official visit from her species to humanity's home world. The news anchors were speculating wildly about what this meant. Was it a political mission? A cultural exchange? The Coalition hadn't announced anything about this visit. Jake's phone rang. It was his old commanding officer. "Reeves, are you seeing this?" "Yes, sir." "What's going on?" "We don't know." "The Valkyrie ship is requesting permission to land at the military base near you. They're asking specifically for you. Apparently, someone important wants to meet with you personally." Jake's heart was pounding. "Do we know who?" "They won't say." "But Jake, the ship is a Valkyrie honor vessel. They only use those for royalty or high-ranking military officials. Whoever is on that ship is very important." 2 hours later, Jake stood at the military base watching the Valkyrie ship descend. It was smaller than a warship, but beautifully designed, with armor plates that shimmered like jewels. A crowd had gathered, news cameras and curious onlookers, all trying to see Earth's first official Valkyrie visitor. The ship's ramp extended. Jake's breath caught in his throat. Cathara walked down the ramp, and she was magnificent. Her armor had fully healed and had been polished to a mirror shine. She wore ceremonial decorations that marked her as a warrior of high honor. Her forearms moved with that familiar, confident grace. When her golden eyes found Jake in the crowd, she smiled in the way only Valkyrie could. "Jake Reeves," she said, her voice booming across the landing field. "I have traveled far to see you." Jake walked toward her, aware that hundreds of people were watching, that this was being broadcast live across Earth and probably half the Coalition worlds. "Cathara, you didn't tell me you were coming." "If I had told you, it would not be a surprise," she said. "And I wanted to surprise you. Also, I wanted to see your home world. It is very beautiful, very blue. I have never seen so much water in one place." "Welcome to Earth," Jake said formally, painfully aware of all the eyes on them. "It's an honor to have you here." Cathara tilted her head. "Why are you being so formal?" "It is me, Jake, your partner, your friend." She paused, then added quietly enough that only he could hear. "Or have you decided that what we shared during the war was only combat bonds after all?" "No," Jake said quickly. "No, I haven't decided that. I've missed you every single day. I just didn't know if you felt the same now that the war is over. Now that we're in different parts of the galaxy. Then you are more foolish than I thought, Kithara said. Did you think my feelings would change because the fighting stopped? Did you think I chose you as my partner only because of your tactical skills? She stepped closer, and Jake was very aware that this entire conversation was being recorded by dozens of cameras. His mother was probably watching this. His father. Everyone he had ever known. Kithara, he said quietly. Everyone is watching. I know, she said. Let them watch. I have come a long way to do this properly, according to both our customs. She reached behind her armor and pulled out something that made Jake's breath stop. It was a blade, about a foot long, with a handle wrapped in ceremonial cloth. But the blade itself was unlike anything Jake had seen. It was made from Kithara's own armor plates, shed during her healing and forged into a weapon. The surface had her unique patterns, the marks of every battle she had ever fought. Among my people, Kithara said, her voice clear and strong, when a warrior wishes to bond their life to another, they forge a blade from their own body. They offer it as proof that they give all of themselves to their chosen one. This blade carries every scar I have earned, every battle we fought together, every moment we kept each other alive. She held the blade out to Jake with two hands. The other two pressed against her chest in a Valkyrie gesture of deep sincerity. Jake Reeves, you are my shield when I cannot stand, my blade when I cannot strike, my reason when I cannot think. You have been these things to me for 4 years. I ask you now, will you continue to be these things for me for all the years to come? Will you accept this blade and become my life-bonded partner? The silence that followed was absolute. Jake was aware that this moment was being broadcast live to billions of people across multiple worlds. He was aware that his answer would be recorded in history. He was aware that accepting would mean changing his entire life, leaving behind the comfortable path and embracing something unprecedented. He was also aware that none of that mattered compared to the hope he saw in Kithara's eyes. Jake reached into his pocket and pulled out the small box he had been carrying for 2 months. Not quite brave enough to do anything with it until now. He opened it to reveal his grandmother's ring, a simple gold band with a small diamond. This is a human engagement ring, Jake said. It's supposed to be given to the person you want to spend your life with. I've been carrying it around, trying to figure out how to travel across the galaxy to ask you a question. I guess you beat me to it. He took the blade from Kithara with both hands, feeling the weight of it, the significance. Yes, he said clearly. Yes, I accept. I will be your partner in all things for all the years we have. I love you, Kithara. I have loved you for longer than I admitted to myself. And I want to spend the rest of my life showing you what that means. Kithara made a sound of joy, that clicking trill that meant happiness. She extended one of her hands, the digits spread. Jake slipped the ring onto one of her claws. It was too small, of course, designed for human fingers. But Kithara looked at it like it was the most precious thing she had ever seen. It is perfect, she whispered. You are perfect. The crowd erupted in cheers. Cameras flashed. Somewhere, Jake's mother was probably crying happy tears. But Jake only had eyes for Kithara as she pulled him into an embrace, careful with her strength. Her forearms wrapping around him in a way that made him feel completely safe and completely loved. So what do we do now? Jake asked. You're here on Earth. I'm supposed to be adjusting to civilian life. We haven't exactly figured out the practical parts of this. I have figured them out, Kithara said. I have accepted a position in the Coalition peacekeeping force. I have requested that you be assigned as my partner. They have agreed. We will travel together, serve together, help rebuild the worlds the war destroyed. Unless, do you want to stay here? On Earth? I would understand if you do. Jake looked around at his home world, at the mountains and the sky, and